Christian, thank you for joining me. I'm glad we could talk about El Nino. And I know that this is a project that first was performed in the cloisters in 2018. And 18 years prior to that, John Adams did an interview where he said, quote, "I want the work to be flexible and not tied to any one way of presenting it." So what were the conversations that you and Julia had when you came up with this revised version of presenting El Nino?
Well, both Julia and I, we love the piece so much, and it's one of the great pieces of our times, I would say, and it has this immediacy and this intensity, and we wanted to focus on that intimacy and immediacy of the work, and which is reflected both in the subject matter, but also on also how we have decided to perform it. So to kind of this, I wouldn't say even distill it, because I mean it's so hard to cut anything of John's music and of the poetry. It's just glorious. But we try to focus on the the intensity and the relationship, the bond between mother and child, so, which begins the whole work and so forth. I mean, we can talk a lot more about it, but it basically started with us believing, as anyone who has heard the piece, I would say that this piece needs to be heard by more people and be performed by more people. And in its original, which is so impactful and wonderful, it is a big piece. It has a six soloists, three of them countertenors, a big orchestra, a big chorus, and children chorus if you want to. And so not every ensemble, not every orchestra, not every chamber orchestra definitely has the resources to perform it. But for us, it is right up there with, it should be played as much as Messiah and the Christmas oratorios are played during this, the pre-holiday season. So, or the holiday season. So we just wanted to figure this out, and we had the blessing. John gave us the blessing for it as well. As you said, he wanted the piece to be flexible and heard. So I think when Julia approached him, and obviously they have a close and wonderful relationship with each other. John has written now two operas for her. That he trusts her conceptualization of his music, but in music in general. And he also now, for this is now the version that I arranged, and he trusts me enough to arrange his music. I'm very familiar with his music as well, and I've conducted much of his. And yeah, so it's a real privilege and a joy and honor that we get to present this intimate version of El Nino.
It's interesting because as you're saying this, Christian, I can't imagine too many composers being open to having their works altered by other people.
True. Very true. And I think if it was, I don't know, this is just speculation, but if it was anyone else than Julia Bullock asking John Adams, since they have such a pre-existing wonderful close relationship and artistic and fruitful artistic relationship, I'm not sure he would have been quite as happy or forthcoming. But so Julia approached him, as you said, several years ago, for her Met Museum residency, and so he was supportive of it, and so that was one iteration of it. But there were several parameters during this presentation. We played it at the cloister, so it had to be a certain amount of people only, and also the length was an hour long. So there were several restrictions that we wanted to break out a bit now for this iteration. So I did a lot of arranging of it for the first one, but I didn't start from scratch at that point. That there was someone else. But for this one, now that we're performing at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in December 21st, that is my arrangement and Julia's concept.
So tell me how it's changed. For people who saw it at the cloisters in 2018, what's going to be fundamentally different about what's getting performed this year?
I mean, it's not fundamentally different. It's basically the same structure and the same movements selection, apart from one extra mezzo solo that we added, since I'm also arranged it for two versions, and one is with chamber choir. So we have a 10 10-piece chamber choir, 10 people singing, which is one of the major changes. And also the instrumentation is different than we played it at the cloister. So I added both the clarinet and the horn back into it. From the first arrangement, I went closer to the original, especially John's music, especially in Niño, but also in the Gospel According to the Other Mary. In these two oratorios, he very much the heart of the sound are the keyboards. It's piano, it's sampler, synthesizer, and also harp, guitar. Those are kind of and percussion. Those are the heart of it. So I went a little closer to his original by adding a sampler, and so expanded the percussion part as well. We were limited at the cloisters with how many percussion instruments we could actually fit. So I went now back to the more original version of it. And so yeah, it's a bit of a fuller chamber ensemble. So and the choir is added back into it.
Well, you also have radically different acoustics going from the cloisters to St. John's the Divine. I mean, I've only seen one presentation there. I saw Vanessa Redgrave do the Year of Magical Thinking there. Which is just one actor on stage and a voice, but you've got those huge, the huge ceilings up there. It's like I would assume that those acoustics are going to make a difference in how you feel the music as conductor and how the audience is going to feel it listening to it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we still want to keep the intimacy of our concept, even though we are playing it in a much bigger space. But it will be still, everyone I think will be drawn also with the lighting that we will choose. Everyone will be drawn into the heart of the music making.
Yeah, in that same interview that I referenced at the beginning of our conversation, Christian, John Adams said that the piece, quote, "The piece is my way of trying to understand what is meant by a miracle." How do you understand what is meant by a miracle as somebody who's leading this music and has arranged it?
That's a big question, and I'm hoping I can answer it somewhat. I mean, I think as a I mean, John is a father and a grandfather, and now our son was born 6 weeks ago, and so that miracle, I think, maybe that's stereotypical or cheesy, but it is a miracle witnessing birth and being able to, I mean, yes, of course, we know what is going on in the body and how it's all happening. And Julia and I, we researched a lot, but there's something special to actually being part of it all and having this miracle of birth being so close to it. And obviously, I didn't give birth myself, but I was there every step of the way, and that is a very special feeling. So I can only imagine that John was thinking a lot about his own family and about how what is so fascinating to me also in the selection of poems and poets that John and Peter Sellers collected for El Niño, that it's not, as it usually is the case with a lot of Western European music, the birth is not presented through the lens of white men. It's more the Rosario Castellano, for instance, incredible poet. She is featured very prominently in both the original El Niño and also in our arrangement, and to know, to witness and to read and hear her lyrics sung and played is very important to us as well. But yeah, it's it's a daunting, not a daunting, but it's an incredible honor and privilege to raise a child, a human being. And I think that miracle is being brought through and shines through the whole piece. El Niño.
I don't know how far in advance this was put on your schedules, but do you feel like the piece is going to resonate differently with both of you now as a result of having given birth to a son?
I I think so, yes. I mean, even just in these last few weeks when I read the poetry and study the music, it hits differently. I mean, it always impacted both of us in a very deep way. Um, but yeah, there's something inexplicable when you read even the beginning that is not necessarily the beginning of the Se habla de Gabriel of the piece is talks about how this other being um, takes up room in yourself and in the woman, and suddenly your body is not your own anymore, so to speak. You're nurturing another human being, and then at some point, this is the only time you've been alone. Now you will never be alone anymore. That's something that you can, I think, more immediate grasp when you have given birth, or when you, as me, as the father, as the partner, um, to being right there. I think that's something I wouldn't have thought about too closely before, or haven't, yeah, immediately experienced it like that.
Right. When you perform this work at the cloisters, one of the things that the New York Times said was that you, quote, elevated an already revisionist work into something much more powerful. We live in a world where people have shorter attention spans, where
Hmm.
30-second TikTok videos have more impact than even this 30-minute conversation that we're going to have. So I'm wondering, does the success of this version of John Adams' work make an argument for truncation of larger works in a society that demands shorter pieces because of their attention spans?
I think yes. I think being able to experience this work, hearing this. It is only an hour long. Also, the arrangement of it, the kind of straightforward narration of it. 1 hour, I think, is not too much to ask for anyone. If it was a Wagner opera of 4 or 5 hours, although I would love to be in it and be part of it and watch it. Some people, I understand that that's a daunting thought, but I think to sit 1 hour and experience a work like this and being able to really delve into it, let everything else go. We do. I think every generation right now, our people now living want that too. They want to be able to let go as well as being impacted deeply. They want an experience. And I think this is some of the most ferocious, most incredible and intense music and lyrics, at the same time some of the most delicate and wondrous. And so I think that is something that would speak to anyone. And I know from many conversations, also with my family, who have seen this or experienced the full original version, who might not be necessarily the most adventurous uh, contemporary listeners, but who were deeply impacted and taken by this piece. I think this is a piece that people will be drawn to. And I mean, as we started the conversation, one of the goals with this iteration, with this arrangement, is that more people will hear it, and the similarly to what Schoenberg and his circle did 100 years ago, when they wanted people to hear the Mahler symphonies or other big pieces, big instrumentation, but they wanted to make it intimate, straightforward, and able for people to hear it in their homes. And so I think this way, it's a very, very beautiful project for everyone.
Well, and it falls in the tradition of what Liszt did. I mean, you look at all the piano transcriptions that Liszt did of Beethoven symphonies, etc. I mean,
Exactly.
alternate versions is something that's been a long part of the classical music repertoire, isn't it?
Exactly. And it's not like, I mean, as I said before, it was so difficult even just to let go of some of the movements that John wrote, because obviously you should go and hear the whole piece, the original piece. But I think having these intimate version, it's something I think it will live on, and it stands beside. It's not in lieu of. It's not uh, supposed to. I don't want everyone to now only play the arrangement. I want everyone who has the resources to play the original piece, of course. But there will be many ensembles who now will be saying, "Oh, wow, we love this piece. Finally, we can put it on."
And will you record it?
Not yet.
Not yet. What are you waiting for?
Oh no. I mean, it'll also this is the first time now we're doing my arrangement, so I want to make. There will be, I'm sure, some changes happening afterwards, and we will continue. I mean, we already have plans for next season to play it several more times. This is only the first time, so I'm sure there will be some changes that I'll make during these rehearsals.
Now you have three of the original singers from the Cloisters for this, and you're adding Rachel Wilson. And I'm wondering what if you will feel any kind of shift or change in the work when you have a different singer, in Rachel Wilson than you had in Janae Bridges.
Right. I mean, both Janae and Rachel are family. They were both at our wedding. So we love them both very, very much, and I'm so glad Janae was able to sing the first time we performed. This time didn't work out scheduling wise, but and we always knew that Rachel would be an incredible addition to the whole team. So I think, of course, every person, every singer, every artist will bring their own energy to it, and their own ideas and reading. But that's the exciting thing about live music and about performing together and being in person, being in communion with each other. So I'm sure it will be different, but I mean, we have changed. Julia and I have changed in these. When was it the last time? 4 years, 3, 4 years when we did it. I mean, we are different artists, or I wouldn't say different artists, but we've developed, we've grown. So I'm sure it will be a very organic development altogether. And it's also, yeah, it's a different. I mean, it's AMOC. It's the American Modern Opera Company. Is the core of all the core musicians. But since it's a larger ensemble, we added a lot of guests to the roster, and the Trinity choir as well, and the many of the musicians. They're all our friends, from whether they're from the Met Opera orchestra or from freelancing in the New York area. So we're so excited to just be there with friends, with family, and performing this deeply impactful and deeply personal piece.
And you're also doing, the first time you did it was before a pandemic, and now you're doing it. One would like to believe that at some point we'll get out of this.
Yes.
But at least we've overcome what I think most people think is the worst of it. So it strikes me as this is the kind of piece that's going to be so deeply emotional that with everything that's happened in those 4 years, I'm betting on a more emotional response from the people who are performing it and from the audience as well.
Oh, I think so. Yes. I mean, and there is. I was thinking the other day also when revisiting Rosario Castellano's poem, the Memorial de Tlatelolco, the one of the movements of El Niño that we're also performing. Also, one of the tracks on our album that is coming out this week. We can talk about that later if you want. But the the poem is about the massacre in Mexico, in Tlatelolco at the square, from 1968, and where the Mexican armed guard, they opened fire on students, on people, on citizens who didn't have any weapons. And if I now look at Iran, what's happening there, and where the own government also is terrorizing and killing their own citizens. There's a real connectivity and real parallel, sadly, there that is deeply impactful and disturbing. And so I think so much of the story, the narrative of the nativity story. I mean, this is after in the piece. It comes after, the slaughter of the children of Herod and by Herod, and so then we go right into this ferocious and violent piece. None of the immediacy and intensity has left from from the nativity story to 20 years ago when John wrote El Niño to now.
Right. And we will talk about the album, which I think is beautiful. I got an advance of it before I spoke to Julia. And I think it's incredible. But before we do, I want to ask you about American Modern Opera Company. Only a few years in since its inception. What have you seen in terms of the organization and its growth since its inception? And what role do you think American Modern Opera Company will play, by the time of its 10th anniversary?
That's a great question. I mean, I'm not officially part of American Modern Opera Company, but obviously I have friends and family in the company and have witnessed it from the start. I think what they're doing is fantastic and incredible and important. Just the fact that there's all the aspects, all the artists are paid the same. There is no tiering. There's no like, okay, the singers are getting that, the musicians, the instrumentalists are getting that, the dancers who are historically or often in many companies are getting the least amount of money. There is no separation. It's always going to be the same. That's also why, of course, it needs a lot of support by donors, and there's a huge base and wonderful board and supporters for the company. And I think what they're doing, just thinking about what it means to be a company, a equitable company, and a artist company in the 21st century, is really commendable and very important, because a lot of other companies are looking at them and trying to emulate them and simulate them. But I mean, so many projects that they've done are, I mean, some of the best performing events that I've been to. Whether that's, I mean, just recently, kind of a semi-stage production of Araoui Messiaen that Julia did with and with Connor and with Bobby and the two dancers. I mean, brilliant and gorgeous, beautiful. Or I know Davan Black Clown and Zach Winokur. Or I mean, what Bobby and are doing in terms of the of dance is so impactful and special. I'm very curious to see how they're going to continue, and I'm very excited for them, and I'm very excited to see it.
Well, when you see Devon, tell him that we would really like Black Clown to come out to Los Angeles, because I would love to see that.
I will. No, I'm really looking forward to seeing him again soon. Yeah.
But it's also, I mean, it's a good time to have a sort of newer opera company, because I feel like we're in a golden age of opera creation, aren't we?
I think so. Yeah. I think that I think everyone really understands that we can't just be the museum and the conserving the old ways and old repertoire. I mean, obviously nothing against all the canonic pieces, and I love conducting them too. But I think it's so important to be in the here and now and be and question ourselves, question the art we're making, question the composers and poems we're selecting, that it really speaks to us right now and represents the diversity that we have in the world, and all the diversity of thought and ideas and voices. And I think they're really conscious of that. most companies now are conscious, at least in what they say. But you gotta deliver. You got to also, yeah,
I
really follow
completely agree.
through.
Right. Now, most people know you as a conductor, but if they listen to Walking in the Dark, they get to hear you as a pianist as well. And which I think, again, I think is such an extraordinarily beautiful album. But I want to ask you about something that Julia wrote in the liner notes. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked her about this as well. She said, if our intentions are translated well enough and are clearly in focus, it may lead to some moments of illumination. What does your work with this version of El Nino allow you to illuminate that is different from what the full work might?
I think the the streamlining of the narrative, of the focus on the bond between mother and child, to then the yeah, I think it's the streamlined narration that is coming to blossom through and is very clear in this arrangement. I mean, of course, there are parts that I mean, the big chorus numbers that one might miss. But if you don't know the big piece, you won't miss, because it's I think it stands alone. This selection of movements, and it's, I think that's the directness that of the approach, and the immediacy of it is very illuminating for me, at least, and I hope for the audience too.
And as for the album itself, anytime somebody is doing their first solo record, there's got to be intense thought and consideration as to what goes on that album. What were the conversations that you and Julia had that led to the track selections that and the songs that were selected?
Yeah, I mean, it is, first of all, I mean, she has the recording contract. It is her album, but obviously, since I'm conducting and also playing piano, and her partner in life and in a lot of music, as she says, obviously, I have we exchanged a lot of ideas and thoughts. Um, well, I think it started with her conversation with Bob Hurwitz from one of the executives at Nonesuch Records, who told her, "Don't worry about what sells. Don't worry if you can tour the album. The album should be a work of art in itself." And that really spoke to her. That really speaks to me. And it's a I mean, she has an incredible gift for curation, um, and that comes through in everything she does, really. And she went through many different versions, different ideas, and of the album, what it possibly could be. Then there was one time, half a year into the pandemic or something, we both were traveling together. We were actually performing Barber's Knoxville in, I believe it was Stavanger in Norway. We were in Copenhagen in the airport, and we had a couple of hours. And so she asked me if we can talk through it, because we all, as I said, we talk and both respect and admire each other very much. And so she asked me for my input with it. And so we talked about, or since we just are performing Barber, I thought, why don't you think about anchoring the album with two bigger orchestral pieces? And oh, sorry, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
I am so sorry. Okay, with internet and with another call coming in, suddenly the
Of course.
the yeah. No, so I thought, okay. I mean, also it wasn't from the start clear whether I would be involved in the album or not. I always told her, do what you would like to do. What is your dream to do? And since also Bob told her, though, think about the time you live in right now. Think of what speaks to you the most. Think of how you want to, what narrative, not narrative, but what do you want to say? And since during the pandemic we were home and played a lot of piano and voice together and sang and through Schubert and Schumann and Wolf and everything and Brahms DBC albums together. Sometimes we ended up recording some of it and putting it online, and I think it spoke to us. It spoke to the moment, or still speaks to the moment, I would say. They're very, in the end, they're classics. I would say they're timeless tracks. Their input and their inspiration is from all over the place. There's one piece by Connie Converse. There's a spiritual. There's there's Barber. There's John Adams, the Memorial de Tlatelolco, and so yeah, we just talked about it, and then it kind of during that talk in the airport, it just kind of crystallized on what it can be, and I said, of course, if you want me to be involved, especially the orchestral songs, since we're just doing Barber and we've spent so much time together, more than anyone else she's done it with, talking and working on Barber and John Adams. So it was a very natural fit, and then same with the piano playing. And even though I love piano, and that is my main instrument after conducting, but the pandemic definitely gave me a chance to practice a little more, play a little more, which I'm very grateful for. But I would definitely say I'm conducting is my main gig, so to speak. But I think we managed to just the love and connection we have, I think shines through all the tracks, and whether it is me on the podium conducting or on the piano accompanying Julia.
Yeah, well, I definitely think people should give it a listen. Do you have time for one more question? I know we're a little bit over on our time.
We're fine.
I'm going to go one more time back to that John Adams interview from 2000 because I found it really intriguing. And he said, entering into this myth, making art about it, and finding your own voice to express it can't help but put you in a very humble position. At this point in your career, whether it's El Niño, whether it's Walking in the Dark, how does your work put you in a humble place, and what realizations do you have as a result of that?
I mean, the act of conducting, the being in connection with each other and with the musicians on stage is very humbling, because I never saw myself as the dictator on the podium, or the like, you need to do everything I say. Sometimes I just listen and see what is being offered, and then make music in real time. And so it is a very humbling experience. I think that's the main thing as a conductor, is just to bring everyone together and make sure that everyone can perform on the best level possible. And if you're not humble in that, I don't think you get that response from people. And now, definitely as a young father of a young boy, it's humbling in a different way, where you feel, okay, well, my whole day, my whole being, I'm in service to this young being, and everything else is taking a little bit of a backseat. And so, and at the same time, I know when I'm on stage, I'm fully present. There's also nothing like it. I did one gig in Colorado a few weeks ago, when Julia's sister was able to be here and help out, which was wonderful. And obviously I missed Lucas and Julia tremendously, but I was also able to just be with the musicians and be completely present and connected, and that is a wonderful, always a very humbling and very wonderful experience.
Well, it sounds like they're both gifts, having a son and being able to do music.
Absolutely. Very much so.
Terrific. Well, I really enjoyed our time talking, Christian.
Well,
are you all right with my
Chris.
posting this interview on our YouTube channel?
I think we're fine. Yes.
Good, good. Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry I don't live in New York because I would love to see this, but maybe those upcoming performances will include someplace out on the West Coast.
They will.
Okay, good. Glad to hear it.
We can be in contact next year about it. Yes.
Sounds good. All right.
Well, so nice to chat.
Congratulations. And thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.